Martin, my name's Steve Kalish. I'm filling in for Bill Haggard, who can't do these any longer. And I'm going to ask your names, okay?
My name is Jerry Martin.
And you're Dave Blum, right?
Yeah, David Blum.
David Blum. And how old are you, Jerry?
I am 86 years old.
And David?
I'm 94.
94. So Jerry, how long did you live in Herculaneum?
I moved to Herculaneum in the early 1960s, so 60 plus years.
And Dave? All your life, I thought I
I
heard.
was born here in 1930. And I've lived
1930.
here all my life except for 4 years I spent in the Air Force.
Is there a flag out there for you on the streets?
Yes.
Is it right out in front of the house?
Yeah,
I know Bill tried to put those flags out in front of the house.
yeah. Yeah, my daughter had that put up right in front of my house.
So who are your parents?
My parents was Arch and Viola Martin. They lived in Rush Tower, Missouri.
And they didn't live in Herculaneum.
No.
Then. So you moved here later on.
Yes.
And Dave?
My parents were Ernest Albert Blum and Cleo Yunt. My dad died when I was 3.5 years old. My mom remarried when I was 11.
So were they born and raised in Herculaneum also?
No, well, my mother went to Herky High School. She graduated from Herky in 1927.
All right, Jerry, do you have any kids stayed on here or lived here?
I have one of my kids lived over in the Prairie subdivision. A couple of grandkids one lives in Stonewater and one lives in the Providence now.
And Dave, do you have any kids living in Herculaneum?
None of them live in Herculaneum at this time. My son used to live in Herculaneum. He lived in the house I grew up in, on the corner of Broadway and Reservoir. And he sold that. They moved to DeSoto. My daughter lives in Festus. Well, both of my daughters live in Festus. Mary Ann still lives in DeSoto, my daughter-in-law.
All right, when you were growing, how old were you when you moved here, Jerry?
I was in probably my middle 20s.
All right, so the next question is growing up, what type of activities did you have? Well, you were already past that age when you moved here. But Dave, your childhood has to have a lot of memories of playing in Herculaneum. So what kind of activities did you do as a child?
Well, my mother started me on piano lessons when I was 9 years old. And I started playing saxophone when I was 12. So I had some music to take up some of my time. And the rest of the time, when I was a kid, we used to play on the bluffs, down the tracks by the creek, swim in Joachim Creek. We had a rope we used to swing out and drop in water there. It's across from Mortician Park on a tree limb there.
Anybody get injured playing?
And we used to ice skate during the winter time. It doesn't freeze like that anymore, does it?
No. So what did you do for money when you were young? Jerry, you didn't live here, so you were already...
No, I went to work for Dow Chemical Company in February 1957. And so I moved to Herculaneum from Rush Tower, and because it was closer to work, and we knew a couple of families that lived up here, and liked it real well, so we just stuck around for a lot of years.
Well, Dave, what'd you do for money? I know when I was a kid, soda bottles were 2 cents a piece.
Growing up in high school, I worked at the bakery here in Herculaneum in the evening after school, picked up a few dollars, and I used to go to school an hour before school started and fill the stokers with coal. It helped the janitor out a little bit. I don't remember how much I made, it wasn't much, but it put a few bucks in my pocket anyway.
That's all that mattered.
Yeah.
What'd you do? Go down to the candy store, buy candy, or
Yeah.
or did you take it home and help mom and dad out with the bills?
That was my spending money.
So it was for me too. Okay, play sports or band. Now, Jerry, you didn't go to high school here, so
No, I graduated from Festus in 1956.
so were you in sports or band? in
We had
Festus?
we had a softball team here and played softball down by the high school, and where they practice football today, and had a pretty good team. Some of the guys from Dow Chemical and some of the guys here in town, and got into a league and had a lot of fun.
Well, you had to be in the band since you
I played saxophone in the band, and I played basketball. I wasn't a starter, wasn't a star, but I played.
As long as you had a good time.
That's all we had at Herky. We didn't have any football team until 1947, was the year they started. And I graduated in 48, so I didn't even go out for football that one year. We didn't have a baseball team until later. I don't know what year they started that.
Who were some of the teachers you remember? Any of them really stand out to you?
The what now?
Who were some of the teachers?
Oh,
Your teachers
teachers?
that really
Uh,
influenced you or stood out or really did a good job?
the teacher always comes to my mind. Was a math teacher I had in high school. Her name was Daphne Crawford. It was an unusual first name. It's Daphne, I think, Daphne. But she always said she had eyes in the back of her head. But she could stand at the blackboard and she'd tell somebody, get back in your seat, and she'd never turn around. I don't know if she could see a reflection on the blackboard or what.
Or she just knew the characters that were going to do.
Sometimes I think she did have eyes in the back of her head.
That'd be something to hide a mirror so you can see and they don't know it. Okay, when you were young, where did you hang out as teens?
We had a place on Main Street down here. Vaughn's Dairy had a place there, an ice cream shop down there. Soda fountain. Kids used to hang out there. Of course, after I got a little bit older, I guess my junior and senior year in high school, there was a pool hall next door, and I used to hang out there quite a bit.
Why not?
Yeah.
But in those days that pool hall was smoky. Did you ever work in town? Jerry, you weren't working Dow Chemical.
No, I never worked for anybody that other than after I retired from Dow, I did cut the grass for Doe Run for, I don't know, 10 or 12 years probably.
You didn't realize that was going to be a lifetime job, did you?
Oh, no, but it was good. I had a lot of fun doing it. I always figured I cut about 100 acres for them.
I just know you're still cutting grass.
I'm still doing this, yeah.
So, David,
Well,
did you
when I
ever
was in
work
high
in town?
school, I think it said I worked at the bakery down here in the evening after school. And there's a place, I used to ride my bicycle called Glimpse of Glory. Later became the Teamster Health Camp.
Oh, yeah.
I worked with a gardener out there, an old man in St. Louis. His name was Port G. Hammer, owned that. He had a big home and a farm there. And I helped the caretaker cut grass, trim hedges, and do a little gardening up there. So I picked up a few bucks there. So.
You worked
And
at the
then,
bowling alley also, didn't you, Dad?
What?
Didn't you work at the bowling alley in Herky also?
Up, not very long. I did a little bit, yeah. But then, after I got out of the Air Force in '53, I worked for St. Joe Lead for about 3 years in the machine shop down there as an apprentice welder. I think I went to work down there in 1953 for $1 and a nickel an hour.
That was the big time, I guess.
Yeah.
David was one of the first 12 that was hired at Dow Chemical Company when they built the plant in 1956. Wasn't it, Dave?
56, I went to work at Dow
One
for
of the first.
$2.75 an hour. That was big money then.
Yeah.
Went to school for 3 months over there for learning how to operate the plant. I got $2.75 an hour for going to school. So
I was a machinist, by the way.
uh,
Was what I did for 39 years. How about memorable businesses? Were there some businesses you have good memories? I know you mentioned the Vaughn's Dairy. You worked at Mises Bakery.
I can remember the Dugan's car shop that was up on Main Street. They sold cars up there, and then they moved down to Crystal City, I guess it is, and at Vaughn's Dairy. I remember we had a show, movie theater on the corner next to the library, and all of that's gone now. But it was back in the day, I say the early '60s. This was a thriving little metropolis here.
Downtown Herky, they had all the
Oh, yeah.
drugstore, the post office, the Fex General Hardware.
And about four, I think there was 4 saloons in that little strip within 200 yards. There was a lot of them.
There weren't many DWIs because you could walk to the bar.
Well, yeah, and we had no cops then here in town.
So did you go to church in Herculaneum?
I did. I was a Catholic for 10 years. I went to the Catholic church, but I was raised Protestant Methodist, and then started going to the Methodist church down on Main Street here, and that's where I wound up.
David?
yeah, I was raised in the Methodist church here when I was a kid. And after my wife and I were married, she was Catholic. She tried to go to my church, and I tried to go to hers. So finally, I just quit going to church altogether. And it's like 10 years later, I started going back to church with her, and I joined the Catholic Church then. So I am Catholic now.
Is that who your wife turned out to be? Or was
My
it,
wife passed away 15 years ago.
but was that your wife you were talking about at the time? Not your wife. Your girlfriend to be your wife? Or was that just...
I'm sorry,
Well, it was his wife, but he was married. They were married when he actually started back to church.
All right. I just
Dad,
know...
tell the story about what Karen said about being a Catholic, about being a Methodist.
Well, back in the day, that was called a mixed marriage. And
Yeah.
Kind of looked down on. And
Yeah.
that term isn't used today like that. Any unforgettable people? You know, there's always that town joker or the one person that stands out that did things that... Do you have any memories of any
the most
people?
unforgettable character that I can remember here in town would be Gore Dunnigan. And Gore, the story I always heard about Gore, that his wife died back in the early 30s, and he just lost interest in everything from that point on. And he didn't take care of his house or nothing. But anytime you saw Gore, I don't think I ever saw him, he didn't have a necktie on. But his house caught on fire one time, and he said, look at him. He said, everybody in town said they wished it had burned down because it's on fire. They all run down here and try to put it out, he said. But he He spelled his name, I think, Dunagan, Dunnigan. He said, when the Lord created heaven and earth, when he got finished, he had a little piece of crap left. He rolled it around in his hand, and he said, done again.
Yeah.
Again.
Not again.
I will tell you a story, what he told me years ago about Gar Dunnigan. And it said the Gars lived down on Main Street, was it? Or
What?
Gar lived on Main Street?
Oh, down at the end of, well, it's, if you went down where the Ambets used to be in the wedge,
Yeah, I didn't go.
he went all the way up the end of that street. It was the second house from the left at the end.
He said that Gar was talking about bed bugs. And he said he tried to get rid of the bed bugs, and he put coal in a can and set the four corners of his bed in the coal. He said the bed bug was so smart they'd crawl up the walls across the ceiling and drop on the bed.
But he was really an intelligent man. People used to take their income tax down to him to make it out. My father-in-law always took his income tax to Gore. He went down there one day and he said, Gore, dirty table dish he had on the table. He said, don't you ever wash that? He said, well, Clyde, he said, once in a while. He said, if I can't remember who ate out of it last, me or the dog. But he was an intelligent man.
Well, he did taxes. He knew how to do that.
He told me, Dave told me about him, that when they had a problem with the IRS, he would go to St. Louis. When he walked in, everybody say, hi, Mr. Dunnigan. You know, they really liked him up there. So he must have been quite a character here in town.
Another Joe Portel, when he retired from St. Joe down there, Louis Richer asked him one time, he said, well, Louis, what are you going to do now that you're going to be retired? He said, well, Louis, I'll tell you. I'm going to get in my rocking chair on the front porch, and for 6 months, I'm going to sit there. Louis said, well, what are you going to do after that, Joe? He said, Louis, but then I might be rested up enough, I might start rocking.
That's a good one. He told me that before.
I like that. I like that. That sounds like something I'd do. All right, favorite nicknames. Any nicknames of guys that had?
Yeah, well, I always got a kick out of what my two cousins, they were twins, Elmo and Elmer. Their nickname was Mo and Murr, which I thought was a good one. But I guess one that really I always got a kick out of was a girl who graduated the year after I did. She was in my wife's class in school, and her name was Gladys Jane. And of course, her nickname from Gladys evolved into Gladass. And of course, from Gladass, it went to Happy Bottom. And to the day he died, her husband still called her Bottom. And I think everybody that knew her did.
Never forget it.
But I thought that was a unique nickname.
Float sack coffee.
Huh?
Float sack coffee. Float sack coffee. How did he get his name?
Colvey. Yeah. Walter Colvey one time, when we were kids, we were on the bridge down there, by the Green Lantern, by the Ambets down there. He had a brown paper bag and he put a brick in it and he threw it in the creek and he hollered, float sack. So his nickname became Float Sack. But it wouldn't float with a brick in it.
I remember Squirrel Richardson, and of course Pug Boppin. Everybody knew Pug. And there was some others, but you know, long time ago.
Well, I have a nickname and it's Crash.
Crash.
Because I just hired on an Amarin and was on a little motorcycle and wrecked it, broke my arm, and was out of work 2 months.
Crash.
And it's spelled similar to my last name with a K, Krasch. My last name is Kalish, Kalisch.
Oh, wow.
So you earn these names.
Yeah.
And as you described,
Yeah.
the woman earned her nickname.
There was a guy in Bonne Terre, they called him Paddlefoot Wilfon, and I always liked that name. You know,
Paddlefoot?
Paddlefoot, yeah. And why? I have no idea.
I've been called a lot worse.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure all of us have.
Yeah.
So, can you kind of summarize growing up in Herculaneum? Is there, you know, so many say this was a special place because you knew everybody. You know, the parents knew all the parents, and you weren't going to get by with anything.
Pardon?
You weren't going to get by with anything you did out there because by the time you got home, your mom or dad already knew about what you did. But do you have any kind of, so how would you summarize growing up in Herculaneum?
Well, I'll tell you, growing up in Herky was a wonderful place to be as a child. A small town, and we were never worried about anything, no problems. It seemed like nothing serious ever happened in this little town back years ago anyway. Now, I'm sure there's things go on here at night that I don't know about now. But back then, everything was peaceful and quiet. And we didn't even lock, my wife and I, we didn't even lock our door at night, you know. But, and you felt comfortable.
I know it changed me when I moved to Herculaneum.
Yeah. But we had everything here in
the
town.
people are all so good.
We had a drugstore, a pool hall. I mean, the little town had a lot to offer, you know. And we had a good school system. I liked the school system. Roy Taylor done a lot to build this up.
Now you're older than me. That some of the people that I interviewed that are my age talked about having the same teacher in different grades. And see, I went to Lindbergh High School, where it's huge high school, and it's such a different experience than it is down here.
My going to school at Rush Tire, 1 through 8, had one teacher for the whole 8 classes. All of them. Of course, we only had about 30 kids, you know, in the whole school, so pretty cool.
Oh, but she knew who was slacking and who she
yeah.
had to help a little more. And,
Yeah.
and I look at how well everybody turned out under that system,
Yeah.
where I was in a production line.
Mm.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I missed out. I envy what you guys went through, other than I didn't go through World War II like a lot of people did. So did you serve in the World War II then? Let's see. No, you would have been too young.
He was in
Yes.
Korean War. Dad was.
So would you serve?
What's that?
You were in the Korean War?
What service was you in? Air Force, wasn't you? In the Air Force?
Air Force, yeah.
What years?
1948 to 1952. About 4 years. I was in Japan and Korea when I got what GIs called the Truman Extension. When the Korean War started, anybody that had less than a year to do got another year on their enlistment. So instead of 3-year enlistment, I ended up with 4.
Oh, wonderful. A gift.
But then I almost re-enlisted. I was going to make a career of it. I worked in the weather station, which I really enjoyed. And I told my wife when I got married I was going to re-enlist and make a career of service. Then I started thinking, I can throw my stuff in the duffel bag and go. But dragging a family, I don't want to do it. So I decided to get out.
I'm sure there's some people that are appreciative of that.
Yes.
Nothing like moving every 2 years or so. Well, you have anything else you want to add or talk about?
Well, I would just say that I've lived here about 60 years, and I just couldn't find a better town to raise a family in. Always been myself. I've always been blue collar. We had the smelter down here. I really enjoyed whistle blowing and all these guys coming home for dinner. They all lived right here in town. It's been a great place really to live.
That was something that was brought up a lot, was that whistle, that everybody knew that whistle was your clock.
Yeah.
You know, it's like when you hear the whistle, it's like dinner time, or, you know, everyone has a different memory of that.
Yeah.
I had whistles where I worked at one place too. Never liked to work under the whistle though.
No. I'm glad I never really worked inside the factory down here. You know, it was dirty, really a dirty place to work.
Yeah, it
a
had
lot
to
of
be.
people did.
Had to be.
Yeah.
And it was good living.
Yeah.
You know, I hear how the lead was so bad and they tore everything up, and yet here's people that lived here 60 years, played in the chat piles.
I had a neighbor, Grandma Hill, down on Long Street. I lived beside her for like 20 years, I think. And she said their old company houses they built, concrete town, and said they bought their house from St. Joe Lid. They gave $400 for it, and their payments was $9 a month, and they said they just about could not make the payments on it. That's the way it was back in the day.
Yeah, people don't realize. It sounds like nothing today, but back then.
Yeah. I don't think we have any idea what people went through back in the early 1900s, you know.
No.
I don't think the people of today would survive it. I don't think they could. They would have to get used to change their ways a lot, for sure.
Well, David was born in the Depression,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and you know, that had to be tough on your mom and dad having kids, but we didn't experience that.
Yeah.
Or I never went wanting for a meal.
Well, I was raised on a farm, born on a farm, and, you know, didn't even know. You know, we always had plenty to eat, you know. We grew our own food, but it was always there, 3 meals a day.
Well, I don't have any other questions on the list, so if you have anything you want to bring up.
I'm good.
Well, thanks a lot for the time. Appreciate it.